Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Cloud Native Coffee Hour. Let me turn down the music a little bit. I am here today with Dan McCracken, as you all know, and a new guest who's been here once before, but not as often, Adam Sova, joining us on the Cloud Native Coffee Hour. Say hello, guys.
Hello.
Hello, guys.
Who made that joke last time? I think Sam made that joke.
Did he?
When I was re-uploading the stream, I watched the very beginning and then I just grimaced again watching it.
Hey, Sam's got plenty of good dad jokes in the hopper for when that day comes someday. He's not here to defend himself. Long. Yeah, he's definitely spent enough time around us.
So today, topic, we're going to have a chill stream today. You know, we've been doing a lot lately, and today we decided to just relax a little bit. We have a special guest in Adam Sova, and we are going to just talk about applications. You know, we talk a lot about Kubernetes. We talk a lot about, you know, CI/CD, security, that type of stuff. But, you know, another thing that we do a lot of is migration. We deploy applications to these platforms. And developing those applications for these platforms is, you know, it's a whole job in and of itself, right? But the topic today isn't going to be just talking about deploying apps to Kubernetes. It's more just, you know, I haven't developed applications in a couple of years. I've been really in the Kubernetes space mostly. And I want to hear from Sova, who is an architect right now, you know, what his views are on where application development's going, how things are being deployed today, not just deployed, but developed and stuff like that. So we're just going to have a chill talk. What do you guys think?
Sounds good.
I love talking to Sova.
Most people do.
It's because he's so humble, generally.
Oh, how it is.
So where to start? Yeah, how about I'll try to kick it off here. I'll try to kick off the conversation in that we used to write, well, you know what? One of the clients we work for right now, actually, I'm sure a lot of enterprises out there write Java apps, right? Java is prevalent everywhere. And it's my feeling that a lot of companies are still lagging behind. You know, when I was writing apps and web services, we were using Spring and Spring Boot, actually. So, I mean, we were doing okay. I would say, like, nowadays, being a Kubernetes engineer, I don't really want to have to load an old school Java app into a container because they're massive things. But I know a lot of companies, even today, are still using old school J2EE type libraries and frameworks instead of even using Spring Boot. So now you're having a container with you know, a self-loaded Tomcat and all that kind of stuff in it. So I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that in terms of, you know, are a lot of companies still old school, or do you feel like there's a shift in the industry yet?
I think it depends on what you define by, you know, by companies. You know, when you think about larger enterprises, I'm guessing that there's, you know, the adoption rate varies hugely between how far they are on their journey. Some application or some organizations move much, you know, more quickly than others. They adopt new technologies at a faster rate. You know, and I would probably categorize those, you know, organizations as, you know, mature organizations with their technology stack, with, you know, their processes around development, how they interact with the SDLC. You know, but I think there's still a lot of organizations that are just, you know, getting into containers and getting their feet wet and maybe trying it with, you know, a smaller set of applications, going through some of the growing pains that come along with that migration, because it's, there's a lot to learn there. It's a mindset shift. I think organizations are already doing, microservices or mini services, if you will, because I think a lot of organizations, maybe don't quite get down to the micro level, but they stay more at like a mini service level. I think they're much more geared to be able to make that shift easily as compared to, companies that are still running old monoliths, and, they're figuring out what the best way to, migrate over to, a new stack, and how to, best chunk that up and, come up with that roadmap for taking something that's huge and breaking it down into something that's going to be a lot more scalable. And, so I guess those are kind of my initial thoughts on it.
What's your take on, you brought up, you have to learn a little bit. You got to learn, there's some education that comes around with going from legacy land to, let's say, cloud native, or something anywhere approaching cloud native utopia, whatever that happens to be. What's your take on where the workforce is, especially in these large enterprises? Like, what's your take on how adept they are, just in general, to adopting that stuff? If you're coming from, old school, what's been your experience working with people so far?
So I think the organizations that are doing well in this area, they have good thought leaders that are, kind of paving the way for the org to move in that direction. Like I mentioned before, I think some organizations are just a lot more mature in their IT practices than others. And, I think the struggles come with some of these organizations that aren't as mature and, almost feel a little chaotic at times with how things are structured. So yeah, I think it's really driven by, the individuals at the organization that aren't afraid to take risks, and, or they have some appetite for risk, where they have a good way to go out, do a POC, think about what that's going to mean, from a development standpoint, from an operation standpoint, to make sure that as they make the shift, they have the people with the right skill sets in place to not only make the change, but then to support it. And, I think that's an important aspect of it.
So, we're Java guys. We live and breathe Java. How about other languages? Being a Kubernetes engineer, I do a lot of Go, right? Go is kind of where the Kubernetes space is, but it does make a lot of sense when, when thinking about containers, right? And trying to make those containers as small as possible. Are these things that you've had conversations about, moving away from Java towards a more natively compiled language? Is that something that ever comes up in conversation?
Yeah. I think that, that can be a complicated area with the amount of time and investment these resources have made into some of the languages like a Java. I think Java's making steps to be a lot more container friendly. Java 11 was, offers a lot more modularization. And even, like when you look at something like Spring, they are working on, their GraalVM implementation.
Yeah, that's cool.
To be able to spin up very fast so that you can start a service in milliseconds instead of taking 10, 20, up to a minute, depending on, some of the services you're looking at. But a lot of these other languages are very advantageous. You look at, some of the stuff that's going on in Go and Python, and there's a lot of movement around there too. So I think it comes down to the org's skill set and their appetite for, training resources on a new technology and getting them proficient in it. So
I was just going to say, a couple of things that you've said really, I think, put together. Well, all I hear, when I heard you kind of go through that, what I hear are major things that would prevent an organization from making progress. And that is, does your workforce, or are you training your workforce, or are there enough thought leaders? Is there enough thought leadership in the workforce to create the gravity to pull everything toward a cloud native architecture, or get people thinking in that direction? I think that's a killer. That'll be a blocker to any org. You can try to build as many POCs as you want, but if you don't have enough gravity to pull it up, I don't know if you're going anywhere. And the other thing was, I forgot the other thing. What I was going to mention was, or you brought up being able to try stuff and taking some risk. And, does the company have a culture that would allow for such things to happen? Is leadership on board with, actually evolving the data center? If you want to think about it that way, Mikita always tells me, Kubernetes is your data center. Everything goes in there. And I used to be like, oh yeah, but what about, no, not this other. Everything goes in there. Then I would tell him, only a Sith talks in absolutes. And he would say, I've only seen the last Star Wars, damn it. Anyway, that's so funny. At any rate, the point being, you do need to have a culture that would allow you to take those risks and allow you to innovate a little bit. And you kind of need both. You need that workforce gravity, and you need the company and leadership to be on board to allow that to even happen, because one can crush the other. I think you have to have both.
Right. And I think it comes down to being able to show the people that write the checks that they're going to get return on their investment here. If you just take something simple like scalability and you break that down, you got to be able to take that, put some real numbers behind it, and show them what they're getting by making this switch, from these big web application servers to, containerized deployments. And, the industry is definitely moving that way. I'd be surprised if there's major organizations that haven't at least dipped their toes in this by now. But yeah, I think it's, it's going to be important to, for organizations to get there.
Yep.
The benefits are there.
So I would love to dive deep and talk about Graal and stuff like that, because I still want to see it used somewhere. Graal sounds so cool. I can't wait to try it. But without going all Java-y on the stream, some other things I think about when it comes to application development. Some companies, and it really depends, a lot of these conversations are, it depends on the company, right? But I think there's a couple different approaches. So I've seen some approaches where you have the developers and all they do is develop their code. They don't even write the tests for it necessarily, right? And then there's a team that just writes the tests. And then there's, the team that writes the Docker file and takes care of the deployments, right? Everything's very separated. I've also been on teams where the development team is the development team, right? So the people who are writing the web services are the ones that are are writing their Maven files, that are editing their Jenkins files. They're the ones that are writing their Docker files and writing their tests and doing load testing. I've seen teams that do it all too. So, in my experience, now I think it depends on the team. I think it depends on the company, but I feel like the team that does it all has a better product in the end. Personally. What do you guys think?
I would say it depends. But I'm also biased that, having... It's really tough. I'm biased because I believe in engineers that are T-shaped, as we've talked about many times. And it's tough. It's tough to put together a really great multidisciplinary team that has the depth in enough of the SDLC to really make that product team a success. It's tough to find. It's tough to get. But if you can get that, if you can, I don't see how that team doesn't outperform, the silos every time, especially when it comes to agility. And if we're measuring success based on agility and being able to pivot, change technologies or change a product really quickly, test something out, test the marketplace, and then throw something away and not, feel bad about it. Obviously those teams are going to win every time. But, like Sova was bringing up, or like we've been talking about, older enterprises, their business model might not care. And it might be okay if they've got silos, because they just don't need to move that fast as, startups and stuff, let's say. They still need to move. If you don't move at all, you're going to, you will eventually be overtaken by those who do. But it's a slower burn. To be,
if you're looking at what's going to be most successful, I think it comes down to having a good partnership between the key teams in the process. Sorry. I think that, if you look at it from a developer perspective, I think developers need to know how to write their code, how it gets deployed, and how to debug it once it's running. They need to be a part of that process. And I think any good developer is gonna be, able to do those things. Now, I think where it gets more interesting is when you start talking about, the platform and the middleware pieces that come into the mix. And how much sorry. And, how much do you... and I think that's where the partnership comes in. Because if you have a team that is supporting the platform and supporting the middleware, and they know how to harden those tools to keep them up and running, to configure them so that one application can't take down an entire cluster, you have, some, subject matter expertise there and some technical expertise on how do we do these, how do we keep these platforms up and running, even with like the build pipeline, how do we configure that middleware piece, if you will, but there needs to be education there between what that, infra dev team, if you will, or that platform team and the developers do, so that the developers know how to correctly use the tools and make the most out of them.
You got me so excited right now. Like, what I'm thinking, I'm a gamer. I'm sorry, I'm so excited. So what's got me excited is I feel like the best teams are the ones where everybody has a specialty. Like we talk about, I mean, like there's books and we read them about, how to build a highly functioning team, or, team building, blah, 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 leadership books. And I don't know, I love this idea. Here's my pitch for the ideal IT team. Okay. What makes the team a team is that they're all doing the same job. Okay. So the core roles and responsibilities are, let's say on a web services team. Okay. You're developing web services. Your core functionality is to be able to write web services. And we'll say Java. So you have to be a Java programmer, you write web services, and you can do the same thing that your teammate can do. But the best teams, everybody is kind of like a specialist at something. So, you have one person that also understands the build pipeline. You have one person that really understands the deployment platform. You have one person that maybe really understands the databases and how we're going to tune those. And, so like, although you're all doing the same job, you have one person that kind of really drives a certain specialty that's not within your main discipline. What do you think? Huh? Should I write a book?
I like that. The only thing that concerns me is when you say one person. And when I think one person, I think single point of failure. And what if this person's on PTO or...
He didn't mean listen to his words. He just... But what did you think of the idea?
But I like.
Well, I think what happens is when you have that person that's a specialist, that means you have somebody to go to. So that person might be on vacation, but hopefully, because he's a part of this team, there's some osmosis that's going on. So people at least pick up to at least an intermediate level. Or if somebody has a deep interest in it, now they're also going to become an expert in this area. It's kind of my thought.
Yep. No, I definitely like, having resources within a single team that can function across multiple disciplines. And especially when, there's, that covers a wide array of disciplines. So, yeah, I love the idea.
I think I want to clarify too, the difference between what I'm recommending here and what I think a lot of people read about as a cross-functional team is that everybody's doing the same job. In my view of it, I've seen many times where somebody tries to create a cross-functional team where they just grab people of different disciplines completely. You grab like a network engineer, you grab a platform engineer, you grab an app developer and a tester, and you just put them all together and you're like, hey, see, now you have all the skills. But there's nothing that bonds them together. Projects come in and all projects don't need all four people to work on them. So projects come in more as project teams, I don't know what's the best word for this. Product teams. Not project teams, product teams. We talked about this before, right? Back in the day, we used to talk about product teams a lot.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You're definitely onto some. I would agree mainly with what you're talking about there. Obviously, you definitely have to have a common goal, and the way you form good bonds and form a good team is if you're working together, and what I heard you say is, everybody has a core work center of, I'm a Java developer, let's say, and eventually it's commoditized, because it is. Now, there are really, really good Java developers, way better than me. I wouldn't even consider myself a Java developer. In my past, maybe, but I was here. I could do the work center because I was trained in the work center. I had great mentors, those who aren't with us, etc. But I was also interested in things other than Java development that I decided to focus on, and that made me that gave me valuable assets to the team, while at the same time I was also a doer. I could do the same thing. I could take a card, get something done, and then get help or, do a PR, have Scotty help me or something, just hibernate or whatever the hell. And, team member. And I would work with those people, and we all had shared that common bond in that common work center. And I feel like that's what you're saying. But at the same time, I was interested in Kubernetes. I was interested in management. I was interested in people, how to get things done in an enterprise. I had different things that I was doing that other people hated and other people weren't any good at. But we still shared that common work center. I guess that's as much rambling as I wanted to do.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point there too about mentoring. And I think that it's really important to be, and I think some of the best mentors are also some of the people that are most curious and most interested in feedback from others. And that makes a great teammate when somebody comes in and they want to learn and they want to contribute, and they're able to take that feedback and use it to improve themselves. And, those are people that are, great to have when you mentor. They're great to peer program with, just, being able to bounce ideas back and forth and, kind of coming from a place of curious there to, go back to some of the old training we've had.
Oh, baby.
And it's, that's huge. I mean, that if you want to be successful in your career, be a good listener. Take feedback, use it to improve yourself.
Yep.
I mean, that's to me, that's one of the biggest assets someone can have.
And then as a mentor, show me that you're doing those things. Make sure I can see that you're doing those things and give me that feedback loop. You're going to be successful because I'm going to make you successcul. Right. I'm going to want to work with you above everybody else because you just want to learn and you actually listen to me, and I like being listened to.
Man. And I better damn well practice what you preach.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, you have no credibility.
We're clipping this for the kids, for the young kids, man. That's the advice right there. That's the nugget.
You watching, Nam? Write that down.
He did. Let's see, what do we got here? Having good developer workflows, mentoring, all of the good culture stuff might be more important than the technical side. I 100% agree with that. Doesn't matter if you can write Golang if your team culture is broken. 100%. This wasn't going to be talking about application development. Now I feel like we're talking about that is from Sam in the chat.
Sam,
nice comment, Sam. I like that. Very good.
This is turning into more of a team building leadership talk. But another piece of this conversation is a clear chain of command in my mind. I have now been a part of a few different flat organizations or flat org charts, whatever. I feel like I'm missing the vernacular here on this. What is it? Flat something.
You're right. It's flat.
Anyways, I think it's really good. The idea of it is really good. Because I think what the idea of a flat organizational chart conveys is, hey, no one's better than you, right? Because I think historically there's a hierarchy and you just feel like you have to work your way up the hierarchy and it makes you feel small, maybe. I don't know. This is just me hypothesizing why people don't like it. But I have also seen at every single place that uses a flat organizational structure, a lot of aimlessness and a lot of not taking responsibility or accountability for decisions. And it makes everyone just kind of run around with their heads cut off. It's very interesting. The idea behind it, the premise behind it is great, but in practice, it does not work. People need direction. People need someone to go to if they have questions. Somebody needs to be the person that's going to make the call. If nobody's willing to make a decision, you don't move forward. And that's why I feel like, having a clear chain of command and a clear structure around how you build your teams is so important. I don't know. Take it or leave it.
I really think that's where leadership comes in. You know, and why you have the org chart to begin with is, you know, leaders, you know, to me, leaders are effective leaders are really good at two things. One, being able to handle the issues that are escalated to them. They are there to handle that kind of escalation. Another area that I think is really key in an effective leader is their ability to spread the culture of the company. And I think, you know, when you touched on there some of the aimlessness, and, you know, you get into some of these silos, and, you know, each like little sub team, you know, has their own completely distinct culture. I don't think that's a recipe for success. I mean, on some level, I think leadership needs to have at least a base common culture of, hey, this is how we're going to interact with other teams. We're going to, you know, they're our customers. We're going to treat them with a customer first mentality. You know, I've been at organizations where it feels like, you know, when you reach out to somebody on another team, like you're being a burden to them. I've also been at organizations where you reach out to another team and they're like, yeah, how can I help you? And, you know, I think the latter is, you know, leads to much more success, happier employees, you know, because when you know how to go and get an answer for something, you know, that's something that you might take for granted if you've never been somewhere where it's hard to get an answer for something or hard to figure out a process. It's like, hey, how do I engage with this team? You know, if that's a problem, you know, or if that's not a problem for you, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because when it is a problem, it sucks. You know, especially when you have a large number of teams that you might deal with, if you don't know how to engage with them because they're each on their own page, and, you know, maybe the demeanor isn't so friendly, man, that sucks. Talk about unhappy, unmotivated employees, you know. That's one quick way to do it.
We got another comment in the chat here. Iceman says the flat organizational structure is strange because those differences in experience levels are still there. They're just hidden. So then the question becomes, who makes the decision when needed? 100% agree.
Yeah. Yep. Good call out.
It becomes kind of this weird, like, yeah, they're hidden, but they're also kind of like known. So like you're a member of this team and you know who's who on the team in terms of like their seniority and kind of like who's got the biggest personality. You know, actually, that's a really good point. I feel like in a flat organizational structure, it's the person who yells the loudest that gets their way.
Leadership through volume?
Visibility.
Decisions through visibility and volume. Certainly that's the way it'll go unintentionally. You know, if there isn't a strategy put in place. And maybe you need to take those teams and seed them with some sense of, hey, you know, right now, this is going to be the person that is the collector. This is where everything bubbles up to. This is their role for now. You know, it's going to be somebody else in the future. I don't know. You know, everything moves with, you know, safe agile now, right? So everything's a PI. It's like, well, why don't you have somebody on that flat org and be accountable for trying to be that that voice, be the loudspeaker for the PI, be, you know, to kind of really help bubble up those things and, you know, be intentional about it. Don't just be flailing around about it. And well, I hope somebody comes along and solves all the world's problems. Like, well, you know, why don't you ask? I bet you there's leaders amongst that organization that just need to be tapped, and you probably get some good stuff coming out of that, is if it's not already happening. If you haven't started that engine, maybe you need to seed it.
So applications. No, this is such a good topic, though. Like, talking about team structure and leadership is just so crucial to application development. I mean, that's how we got here, but it's just so true. The most effective teams, whether it's application development or any other type of IT related role. I mean, I'm sure this crosses over other industries as well, but just teamwork, leadership. It's what makes or breaks it.
Yeah. And leadership, not necessarily in title as well.
Right.
Everybody has the ability to be a leader. And I think that's something that's important to grow in yourself. And I think that starts by being a good listener. Like I said before, you listen, you learn, you lead.
Was that a 90s song? You live, you learn. Yeah. You live, you learn, you...
That's Alanis.
It's Alanis Morissette, right?
Yeah.
Here we got Adam Sova quoting Alanis Morissette.
I didn't say live, I said listen.
So funny. So where do we take it from here?
I know we could kind of go back into the, how do companies go from monoliths to, or, from legacy cultures to some more modern cultures with cloud native tech. I think of all the things, maybe I don't mean to summarize, but of all the things I've heard so far that are the most valuable to a listener, let's say, the piece about listening and giving feedback to someone that is teaching you. I have, all of my best memories on any team have always come from those one-on-one interactions where you're just in sync with somebody. And it's like, we've made apps before, they get retired, but those, the people side is always the stuff you remember. And it lasts a lot longer than technology, I'll tell you that. So, if anyone were to take away nuggets from today, I think it's what Adam said about listening and giving feedback and kind of asking for more and figuring out that cycle and getting in the same tune with your finding a mentor, or working with other teammates who you might be learning from. It can be anybody. It doesn't have to be like, oh, that's my mentor. No, it's someone you're on a project team with who might be teaching you something. That means they're your mentor for now. And it might turn into something good if you listen and you're patient and really work with them. It'll take you places. I think that's a really important thing to highlight today.
No, I think it's good to do a summary. I think we're going to have a little bit of a shorter stream today, and honestly, we're only 10 minutes shy of what we were shooting for. So I think that's a really good summation of the stream.
That's a good summation of what I tried to summate.
Yeah, it was awesome. I don't want to keep this going too long, and I don't want to veer off, but what you said reminds me of when we were working on I forget which web service. I think we were writing Encounter. We worked for a hospital system, and we were revamping the whole appointment visit web service, and we were calling it Encounters. And we got into a room with a subject matter expert, a SME, and we spent multiple days, several hours, just asking questions and listening. And I learned so much from that. That was so much fun. Yeah. That was with Rachel, I believe, right?
It makes it a lot more fun to write your software when somebody else gives a shit. It's like, it just feels good. Feels good.
Yeah. Okay. You guys have any last remaining thoughts you want to share before we wrap up? No. Okay. Silence.
Good.
Well, I was going to give Adam a chance because I'm known for rambling from him, and I still love him. I really appreciate that he's on here today. And I hope to see a lot more of that. I think there are some really interesting cloud native software development practice talks that we've, you and I really not gotten into much yet. And I think today was good. We kind of talked about the overall, maybe some of the whys. We might have been touching on maybe the why or some of the challenges with the org as you transition into the technologies. But there is also the shiny, which is, well, let's build the shiny thing with Graal VM, because obviously that's way better than heavy JVM. Who needs that when you have Graal? So I'm really looking forward to some of those talks, because I love that stuff, but it's like we talked about, it's not my specialty, but I'm aware, and I love learning a little bit more.
Yeah, and I guess on that note, Devs Operative is growing, and I think you're going to start seeing more streams from different people as we move forward, and I think some of those streams will be more application driven too. So look forward to that.
Yeah, I think there's one that Scott and I want to do at some point for talking about the microservice outbox pattern. Something that we have used in the past to solve some unique problems. And it's turned out to be very successful. So, and actually, I think Scott saw an article on Mongo about it the other day. We wrote some libraries around this for a client we were at, and we saw an article on Mongo recently about it. So it's kind of cool. So that might be a good stream topic in the future.
I love that.
In there, show a little code, talk through the pattern.
We'll have Kubernetes ready.
Deploy it to ARM.
Needs to be ARM compatible.
I love it. Okay. Well, short, chill stream today. Hope people enjoyed it. I did. I love talking about this stuff. We got to do more content related to this kind of stuff. But all right, I'm going to call it a day. So thank you for watching the Cloud Native Coffee Hour hosted by Devs Operative. I'm your host, Dan Mikita. We had Dan McCracken, Adam Sova here today, and we will see you next week for another excellent stream.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having me.